Hi everyone, welcome to the GRESB 2025 Infrastructure Assessment Q&A. My name is Shelby Curry and I'm a senior analyst on the GRESB member success team based in Boston. My team's number one goal is to ensure that your GRESB journey is as smooth and as successful as possible. We hope that this Q&A session will leave you feeling prepared to finish out a strong 2025 reporting season. Before we get started, I want to encourage you all to ask questions at any point during today's session using the live chat feature. If we're unable to answer all questions within our 1 hour together today, we'll be sure to reach out to you as soon as possible with additional clarification. Now on to today's agenda. I will point out some key milestones within the GRESB assessment timeline, and then my colleague Shweta will discuss the 2025 updates to GRESB standards and assessment. Then I'll continue on with some reporting tips and tricks, and Tiago will answer some of our most requested questions. Okay, I'm sure you all are well aware that we're in the midst of the GRESB reporting season, but there's much more to GRESB that happens outside of this 3-month window. During Q1, we worked to prepare all of the tools and resources you need to feel well informed and on top of your GRESB reporting. This year, we published improved reference guides and scoring documents, as well as many supporting materials like a technical FAQ, a new online training platform, and the materiality and scoring tools. You can find all of these things on go.learngresb.com or the GRESB website. From April 1st to July 1st, the assessment portal is open for you to complete your reporting. In the summer, we validate evidence and score submissions. In September, we launch preliminary results and hold what is called the review period. And lastly, in October, we publish official results ahead of an exciting results sharing season. There are several things you can do right now and a few deadlines that you should mark on your calendars. First, as I mentioned, the assessment portal opened on April 1st. All participants have until July 1st to submit their assessments. Secondly, if you or someone on your team is new to GRESB reporting, you can request a new service called GRESB Quick Start until the end of May, which is specifically designed to catch those who are less familiar with GRESB up to speed. You have until June 20th to request a pre-submission check, and until June 27th to schedule it. Be careful not to wait too long to schedule this service, as slots do fill up quickly. Finally, during the first 2 weeks of September, after we've released the preliminary results, you can request an assessment correction if needed. Moving on, I'm really pleased to share that GRESB launched the first GRESB Accredited Professional Exam, or GRESB AP, for infrastructure. This exam is designed to distinguish individuals with the skills to collect, manage, and report ESG data within the GRESB assessments. This credential recognizes individuals based on their knowledge of sustainability reporting for infrastructure assets and funds, enabling them to drive improved sustainability outcomes. The exam covers everything from GRESB fundamentals and industry knowledge to more technical topics like evidence validation and scoring mechanisms. The questions are dynamic and application-based to equip APs with a deeper understanding of the GRESB infrastructure assessments. We're really excited to see this inaugural class of infrastructure APs grow. As we get further into the reporting season, please do not hesitate to reach out to the GRESB member success team by using the contact form on our website or by emailing info@gresb.com. My team and I are here to answer any and all of your reporting questions. If you have a more commercial-focused question about your contract, for example, your GRESB account manager is happy to help. Now I'll pass it on to Shweta for the 2025 assessment updates.
Hi, I'm Shweta, and I'm a senior analyst at the Member Success team at GRESB. In today's session, I'll be taking you through the main changes in the 2025 GRESB infrastructure assessments. Based off of the feedback and developments from the 2024 assessments, GRESB has introduced multiple changes to the standards, mainly addressing the pain points in the assessments. These changes were published in November 2024 with a simplified summary changes document accompanying it. We'll begin with an overview of all changes. The priority areas that have been identified across all assessments are score differentiation, reporting burden, especially with new regulations and framework being introduced, and a need to better assess the performance of assets. The summary of changes include, first and foremost, the removal of indicators to reduce reporting burden across all 3 assessments. This has resulted in a reduction of almost 150 data fields. Within the asset assessment, changes include a new and enhanced criteria for net zero target setting, increased data comparability and quality through changes in Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions reporting, introduction of data coverage for key performance indicators, and finally, scoring of verifications and assurance of GHG emissions data for larger assets. Within the fund assessment, there are improved rules for asset to fund aggregation so that grace period assets do not impact the fund's score or data anymore. No score penalty for new funds in their first years of reporting under certain conditions. So, the first priority was reducing reporting burden with the removal of indicators. These indicators are as shown in the table. The indicator that addresses individuals responsible for ESG, climate-related, and DEI objectives has been removed across all the three assessments. Entity materiality assessment and stakeholder grievance monitoring were removed across the asset and the development asset assessment. Within the asset assessment, the indicators on monitoring ESG performance, implementation of ESG actions, output and impact, and awards have all been removed too. Additionally, CA1, which was for infrastructure certifications, which was previously scored, will not be scored anymore. It can still be answered for reporting purposes. In the fund assessment, entity materiality assessment will not be scored anymore. Now let's go to indicator level changes. The first update is clarification of existing indicators. The climate-related risk management indicators were manually validated for the first time in the 2024 assessments. This year, based on industry feedback, GRESB wanted to enhance the clarity of the manual validation requirements for these indicators in the guidance documents. These indicators are RM 4.1 to 4.6 in the asset assessment, RM 5.1 to 5.6 in the development asset assessment, and RM 3.1 to 3.6 in the fund assessment. The 2025 standard and reference guides now provide extra clarification on the manual evidence validation requirements, such as providing examples of appropriate evidence to include. There are no impacts from a scoring or reporting perspective. The next indicator is GH1, which is the greenhouse gas emissions. This year, scoring of verifications and assurance of GH1 data will be introduced for assets that it is material for. First, the materiality for verifications and assurance will be determined by a new question under indicator RC7, where participants will answer this question based on three metrics: balance sheet total, net turnover, and number of employees. If an asset meets at least two of the three conditions, verifications and assurance of GHG emissions will be material and scored within the indicator of GH1 if GH1 is already material for the entity. These thresholds are also aligned with the CSRD requirements. For assets that this is of relevance, the verifications and assurance of Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions will be scored in indicator GH1, with 20% of the total indicator score being attributed to these responses. Points are allocated based on having Scope 1 and Scope 2 verified or assured according to a selected scheme. I would like to note that assets categorized under the renewable sector will not be affected by this materiality. The scored elements will still be the emissions avoided metrics, irrespective of the new materiality outcome. Additionally, there are some reporting changes under GH1. First, the net zero element has new data points to be reported in order to receive full points from this subsection. Second, it is now mandatory to report on location-based Scope 2 emissions in the GH1 table if you are reporting yes to this indicator. Market-based can still be reported on a voluntary basis. Finally, participants have to note whether the reported Scope 3 emissions have been assessed for materiality or relevance and identify which categories have been considered as material or relevant to the asset. Moving on to general changes in the performance indicators, Previously, to capture data coverage of reported performance metrics, the exceptions question was used with a binary response of yes or no. As a way toward improving data quality, this year the data coverage metric will be introduced on most of the performance indicators. These indicators are energy, greenhouse gas emissions, water inflows or withdrawals, water outflows or discharges, waste, and the health and safety indicators. If these indicators are of relevance, then 50% of the indicator score will be attributed to the data coverage metric within them. The data coverage input will be scored through a sliding scale system, with a linear proportional increase in score for each additional percentage that's reported, from 0 to 100%. Therefore, the only way to score full points in this element is to report 100% data coverage. Here is an example of data coverage metric for indicator WT1. Next is the health and safety indicators for employees and contractors, which is HS1 and HS2. Previously, the scored elements were the self-reported intensity metrics of lost time injury frequency rate and total recordable injury frequency rate. In 2025, the scoring element has been shifted to the absolute values of lost time injuries and total recordable injuries. Lastly, there are some minor changes to other indicators within the asset assessment. First, the structure of indicator LE2, leadership commitments, has been amended to include a simple drop-down list. It still remains as an unscored indicator. Self-reported intensity targets have been removed from all performance indicators. The metric wildlife fatalities is no longer mandatory in indicator biodiversity and habitat. The gender pay gap metric now allows users to input a value from -100 to +100 in indicator EM2. And lastly, 4 new asset classes have been added, 3 under the transport superclass, 1 under power generation X renewables, and 1 under environmental services. The materiality outcomes of these newly added asset classes can be found in the 2025 Materiality and Scoring tool. Next, let's move on to the infrastructure fund assessment changes. Apart from removal of indicators, we also have certain changes to the aggregation on the fund asset level. First, from 2025, first-year assets connected to a fund and that are on grace period will no longer contribute to the GRESB's fund assessment performance or development score, and therefore will be excluded from the fund score. New fund participants, that is funds that are participating for the first time in 2025, can exclude assets from scoring without facing penalties, but under certain conditions. And finally, in the development asset assessment, there are 3 main changes. Similar to the asset assessment, the drop-down list of LE2 ESG leadership commitments has been amended to be a simple drop-down list. In indicator GH3, embodied carbon, participants will have to report the emissions in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent rather than in kilograms. Again, the final one, similar to the asset assessment, in the health and safety indicators for employees and contractors, which is HS1 and HS2, the scored elements have been shifted from the intensity targets to the absolute values of lost time injuries and total recordable injuries. This marks the end of all the 2025 changes, and now Shelby will share some insight into reporting tips and tricks for this year's assessment.
Speaking more about the reference guide, we've refined the 2025 version with a more user-friendly structure and clearer content. Before you get nervous, we didn't take any important information away, but we relocated it to better focus your attention only on the information that you need to fill out your assessment. For example, we've streamlined the introduction and reorganized appendices, which are now easily accessible within a side navigation menu. We've also enhanced clarity around reporting requirements, refining sections about fund asset connections and relationships. These clarifications were driven largely by questions from many of you participants. Also informed by some of our very own members, we took a look at the validation requirements to offer more flexibility to our very diverse participation base, while also maintaining the rigor needed to verify participants' responses. For instance, we refined the guidance on the climate-related risk assessment indicators and LE4, which is about ESG performance targets. Note that we didn't change the requirements necessarily, but we listened to questions to clear up some previous misconceptions and uncertainties. And finally, the guide now reflects the 2025 standards that Shweta went over. ensuring alignment with the latest framework. All of these updates are designed to make the reporting process smoother, more intuitive, and less time-consuming. To further enhance clarity and usability, we've introduced several key additions to the scoring document this year. First, we've introduced new introductory sections to provide a clearer foundation on scoring fundamentals. The GRESB scoring model provides an overview of the framework, and a section called Indicator Score Breakdown clarifies how scoring weights and other fundamental methodologies work, including how an evidence validation status can impact your score. We've also clarified the asset performance table scoring, which is a crucial part of showcasing an asset's environmental performance metrics. The performance tables include a lot of different terms, color coding, and formatting that directly correspond with how GRESB scores the data within them. We hope our new scoring document language will help you identify which elements are mandatory, scored, or just there for reporting purposes. I'll speak more to this in a moment. And finally, we've added a new scoring weight redistribution appendix. The GRESB Foundation chose to retire several indicators with diminished relevance to reduce the reporting burden and evolve the GRESB standards. This appendix in the scoring document outlines how scoring weights have been adjusted in light of this indicator retirement. The reference guide and scoring document are of course critical materials, but there are many more resources available to you. For example, in March, we launched a new online training platform that includes a resource library with all the materials that you need in one place. Whether you're looking for video courses, quick reference materials, or technical methodology documentation, everything is organized to support your GRESB learning. To access the platform, go to the GRESB website and select Online Training from the Insights menu. From this page, you can register for training and resources within the learning platform. Note that you can only access the learning collections that you register for. And of course, feedback on the learning platform is always welcome. Just reach out to info@gresb.com. If you're looking for quick access to a certain guidance document, remember that you can always go to the resources page on our website. It has been updated to include new versions of several key materials, including the materiality and scoring tool, the indicator summary guide, and technical FAQ with some of your most commonly asked reporting questions. And lastly, an Excel version of all the assessments. Whether you're brand new to GRESB or have been reporting for years, we hope that these resources will prepare you for success. Now, here are some key tips to keep in mind. If you're new to GRESB or looking for a streamlined way to get started, we recommend trying GRESB Quick Start. This service is designed to help first-time reporters navigate the assessment process with ease. It's a great way to get familiar with the GRESB framework, understand reporting expectations, and ensure that you're on the right track before diving into the full assessment. Then, submit early. The GRESB portal closes on July 1st. Many of you are likely well aware of the stress that comes with the last-minute submission push, so give yourself plenty of time. Then, if you're requesting a pre-submission check, formerly known as the response check, make sure that you've completed as much of your assessment as possible at least 1 week before your scheduled call. This will help maximize the value of the review. Next, organize your users within the GRESB portal. Only account managers have the ability to submit an assessment, so ensure that the right people have the right roles well in advance. And finally, don't hesitate to reach out to a GRESB partner for support. Whether you need guidance on reporting or data management support, they can help streamline the process and ensure your submission is as strong as possible. Now on to some evidence validation rules and best practices. I'll start with some of the basics. Validators will review all uploaded evidence documents to ensure that they fully support the selections made. As a reminder, evidence must 1. Clearly support all selections within the assessment. 2. Must apply to the reporting year unless the indicator states otherwise. 3. Apply to the reporting entity for which you submit an assessment. For this, it's not always clear if and how an entity is related to the group or organization of which it is part. Please make sure that the name associated with your submission is clearly referenced within your evidence or clarify any structural relationships. And 4, of course, evidence should be submitted as either a document upload or a URL. If you are using a URL, please make sure that they lead directly to the relevant content within 2 clicks to facilitate review. Now, a few things are new in 2025 as well to keep in mind. GRESB now accepts evidence in any language as long as the system can read the text within the file. I'll touch more on this in a moment. Second, a summary of manually validated indicators and their requirements is now included in Appendix 4 for easier reference. And lastly, if a PO 1 through 3 decision on policies was fully accepted in a previous year, it will carry over as long as the selections and evidence remain unchanged. No action is required on your end, so long as you don't make any changes. Now for our evidence do's and don'ts. First up on the do's list is to use a cover page. Available in Appendix 4, the cover page helps to ensure that nothing is lost or misinterpreted during the validation process. Similarly, we encourage you to highlight relevant text within documents to help validators quickly find key information. You can also use the open text box if you need to clarify how your evidence applies to the reporting year or the reporting entity. Then, review indicator-specific requirements in the reference guide closely to ensure that your evidence fully meets expectations. Although GRESB cannot pre-validate your evidence, we're always here to help with interpreting the evidence requirements. A pre-submission check is also a great way to give yourself the peace of mind that your evidence is up to par. Now for the evidence don'ts. First, try to avoid zip files. As I mentioned, the more difficult it is to sift through your documentation to find the support, the more room there is for misinterpretation. PDFs, for example, are much cleaner to review. Second, do not upload images of untranslated text. As I mentioned earlier, GRESB will now accept evidence in any language so long as it is in a readable file type, like Word or PDF. The translation system cannot read text embedded in pictures, so if you submit evidence in a language other than English, please make sure it's not submitted as a photo or screenshot, or if it is, you'll need to provide your own translation. And finally, on the don'ts list, avoid overselecting options. Overselecting may end up leaving you with a partially or unaccepted decision if your document cannot truly support enough of your selections. Be mindful only to select what your evidence can confirm. Moving on, for those of you who are returning participants, your assessment will be partially pre-filled with last year's responses to make your reporting process a bit easier. Of course, not all indicators can be pre-filled due to the assessment's yearly evolution, but participants can clearly see in the portal where pre-filling was applied. If a pre-filled indicator is also subject to manual validation, it may also be pre-validated, giving you the peace of mind that last year's validation decision will remain consistent. Still, we strongly recommend you to review all pre-filled indicators, responses, and evidence requirements. The indicator summary guide on our website can give you a quick overview of the pre-filled and pre-validated indicators to help you plan and organize your reporting. Lastly, I want to share a few tips for asset assessment participants when filling out their asset performance data. The tables within the energy, GHG, air pollution, water, waste, biodiversity, and health and safety aspects of the assessment are where participants report much of the data making up their performance score. Before submitting your asset performance data, here are a few things to keep in mind to ensure accuracy and completeness. First, pay attention to cell formatting. Cells outlined in dark green border indicate mandatory fields that must be completed. Shaded cells are fields that impact your score. However, given the diverse asset classes that participate in GRESB, some sectors are scored differently than others. For example, assets in the renewable power sector are assessed based on total energy imported or purchased, whereas other sectors are assessed based on the total energy consumed. You can refer to the scoring document for details on what each color means. It is important to note that not all scored cells are mandatory. The 2025 reference guide points out exactly which metrics are optional, but also scored, to help you confirm that all scored metrics are completed as intended. Note that the targets field should be left blank if the entity lacks a target for this metric. The portal interprets 0 as an actual metric, so be sure only to report this if it is accurate and true. And finally, previous year data cannot be edited. If you catch a mistake or discrepancy in last year's reporting, we suggest clarifying this in the indicator's open text box to inform any readers of your benchmark report. And with that, I'll pass it on to Tiago for the last part of our call.
Hello everyone, I am Tiago. I am an analyst in the Member Success team, and I'm here today to present you the Q&A section of this webinar. My goal today is to guide you through some frequently asked questions, and we will start with some general, then we go to the fund assessment questions, and finally we finish with asset and development assessment questions. The first question we have here is one of the most frequent interactions we have with participants, which is whether GRESB can add or remove users from a specific entity. With that in mind, we believe it's worth mentioning that account managers can handle this process themselves. Of course, we are happy to assist, especially when you need to add access to a large number of entities, which can be quite time-consuming. But for future reference, you can always follow the steps outlined in the slides to update the users. So the answer is no, you don't need to contact GRESB, but if you need any assistance, we will be there to help you. Another common question is how to modify the components an entity is reporting to. For example, how can I deselect the performance component or select the management one? And the answer to it is that you can change these anytime before submitting the assessment. To do so, once you select your entity, you can click on More on the right and select Component Selection, where you will then be displayed with all the menu with all the components that you can select if you want. After this, you just save it and it's done. Your assessment will be automatically updated with the indicators correspondent to that component. The third question is, do I need to report on unscored indicators? No, you are not required to report on unscored indicators. In all indicators within the assessment, you can select No when asked if you are able to report on that information in specific. In the infrastructure assessments, some indicators are predefined as not scored, while others may receive the score of 0 due to the materiality of the reporting entity. In both cases, these indicators are intended for reporting purposes only, meaning they serve as a way for you to disclose information to the readers of your benchmark report. But if you don't want to disclose this information, you will not be affected and your score will not change because of this. The following question is, what is the difference between a peer group and a benchmark group? Both groups are used for comparison purposes only, meaning they have no impact on scoring, but the way they are built changes a bit. On the left, on the peer group, it's a more detailed group of entities that share similar characteristics. On your benchmark report, this is shown under the peer comparison. On the right, you have the benchmark group, which is based on the entity's characteristics as well, but also on the component selection, meaning that here you'll be compared with entities that have the same selections as you. These are shown under the component titles, so the management and the performance components, in your benchmark report. Again, it's important to note that this will not affect your scoring, and the groups may not always include the exact same numbers. On an example of the slides, you see that the entity has 15 entities on both the peer group and the benchmark groups. But this is not always like this, and you should always double check your benchmark report to have the exact number of entities on your groups. Now we will jump into the questions about the infrastructure fund assessment. The first question is how to link an asset to a fund. Funds can link the underlying assets that are part of their portfolio through the GRESB portal. Once the link has been established, the asset score will contribute to the fund's performance and/or development component score. This link can be requested through the calendar year, but it must be established before the fund submits, because after the fund submits, there's no way for GRESB to link the asset information with the fund's information. On the fund side, there are two ways to do it, and both of these are showed on the slide. You can do it through the GRESB portal, where you can add the asset through the Asset Link tab on the right, as displayed in the image. You click on Asset Link, Add Asset, you fill in the details, and you connect the asset. You can also do it through the assessment. While you are filling the assessment, in indicator RC6, you can edit the table, add the asset, and then fill in the details just like you would do it on the Asset Link tab. Once you complete this, the GRESB system will automatically send a link request to the asset via email, which the asset can then either accept or reject it. It's important to note two things here. Only users with account manager or investor relation manager access rights can access and accept these requests. The second thing is that all links can be accessed through the Fund Links tab on the right. So on the Fund page, you have Asset Link tab, and on the Asset page, you have Fund Link tab. Besides adding these assets, the fund participants have the option to exclude specific assets from contributing to the performance and development component score, but only if there is a valid reason. When filling out the assessment and reporting in RC6, you can select a reason for exclusion from the drop-down list, where you will find the list of reasons displayed on the screen, both on the left, in the bullet points, and on the screenshot on the right. These also include the new reason mentioned earlier in the 2025 updates, which is the new fund participant reason. If the reason is valid, the asset will not be included in the score calculation, but please be aware that this will be highlighted in your final benchmark report, so everyone that reads your report will know that you excluded a specific asset and the reason for it. And now we jump into the infrastructure asset and development asset questions. The first question here is, do I need to report each facility individually? What happens if you need to report multiple facilities under the same assessment? Do they need to be reported one by one, or can you just aggregate them into one? The answer here is it depends. If you have a large number of facilities that share a similar sector and location, then you can aggregate them into one, instead of reporting each separately. For example, let's say you have and you manage a huge network of wastewater pipeline stations, and they are all located in the same country. You can report them as a single facility by aggregating their GAF weight in your portfolio, and you report this one facility with a larger GAF. You can see the two thresholds for aggregation in the slides. These are sector and location, but the complete guidelines are also available in the reference guide. And if you have any specific example that you don't know how to aggregate, you can always reach out to us and we will help you on how to do it. The second question relates to materiality. How can I simulate materiality for my asset? You can simulate materiality by using the Excel materiality and scoring tools. These are two tools available, one for the asset assessment and the other for the development asset assessment. They both work in very similar ways, and they try to replicate the structure and functionality of the materiality assessment indicators in the assessment itself. These are RC7 for the asset assessment and RC6 in the development asset assessment. And now you ask, what can you get from this? What can I get from using these tools? By filling in information about your asset's characteristics, such as the economic size, the sector, the geography, and other attributes, the tool helps you simulate how the ESG issues are material to your asset, and shows the maximum indicator score achievable based on those characteristics. It's important that these tools are offline Excel tools, and they are not connected with your portal. So, it's not because you fill the tool that your portal will be automatically updated with it. You still have to do it separately. Keeping the materiality topic, then we speak on issue level materiality. What is this? In GRESB, materiality not only impacts the final score of some indicators, but also impacts the way you achieve the full score in static indicators. For example, in the asset assessment, the 1.65 points for PO1 are achieved by selecting different combinations of environmental issues, depending on the relevance of each issue for each participant. The same applies for the remaining POs, so PO1, PO2, and PO3, and some of the risk management indicators. The conclusion here is the maximum achievable score is the same for all participants in some indicators, but the way to achieve this maximum score changes from participant to participant. With all this materiality impacting your assessment, how do you know how much each indicator is scored and the relevance of each issue? At the indicator level, on the assessment portal, when editing your assessment, you can see the score of the indicator in green on the top right corner. For indicators affected by materiality, the scores and relevance levels will also be mentioned here, but only after the entity and reporting characteristics section of the assessment is completed, because we need this information to know the materiality for your asset. On the slide example, you see that indicator EN1, energy is high relevant, so it has 10 points assigned to that entity. On the issue level on the right, every time an indicator has issue level materiality, so the topic we saw on a previous slide, we will find a table similar to the one displayed under the indicator itself, with the relevance attributed to each of the ESG issues. On the example of the slide, once again, there's a high relevance for energy because these are the same entity, so the materiality is the same across the entire assessment. Lastly, on materiality, there are two types of materiality that affect the development assessment. The first is the dynamic materiality. What is this? This is the redistribution of scores across the scored indicators that are not directly influenced by the materiality outputs. After the materiality outputs are known, the scores are then redistributed across all remaining scored indicators, ensuring that the total sum of all the indicators is 100. We also have the phase-based materiality, and these are indicators that are linked to construction-related activities, and they are weighted based on the relevance, such that the indicator is assigned as medium relevance if the asset has reported to be in construction phase, or no relevance if the asset has reported to be in pre-construction phase. As I said, this is known as phase-based materiality and only affects indicators RP 2.1, RM 3.1, 3.2, MA1, and HS3. These were the questions we had prepared for you, but if you have any question that was not covered today, you can always reach out to us, the member success team, via info@gresb.com. And with this, we finalize the webinar. We hope you enjoyed, and please reach out if you have any questions that you want to be clarified about. Thank you.